south and east in Alaska, and you'll discover a land of contrasts, the midnight sun and midsummer ice, majestic mountain peaks in the south, and the flatness of a vast plain and the sea to the north. A land where it rains only a handful of inches a year, yet wetlands flourish, and rivers crisscross a carpet of tiny tundra wildflowers, along with the caribou. And under this ancient and uncivilized place lies an ingredient that's crucial to modern industrial civilization: oil.
ANWR can produce 600,000 barrels of oil a day for the next 40 years.
That will threaten our life because it'll take away who we are.
It looks like I just seen dollar signs in their eyes, and it looks like all they want to do is drill.
We're told we either protect the environment or we develop energy resources. That is a false choice. We can, in fact, do both.
It's impossible to industrialize that area without changing the nature of that landscape.
This is a flat, nothing area, just flat.
I mean, all you have to do is stand here and take a look around, and you can see what an amazing place this is.
Really, I wish you could just go 1, 2, 3 and poof, there'd be gas.
Can oil and wild mix? I'm Randy Meier. I'll show you the wilderness, the animals, and the people of Alaska's Arctic Wildlife Refuge, and the oil fields the industry wants to build here. Join me for Oil Field of Dreams tonight. Good evening, I'm Randy Meier. For the next half hour, we're going to show you an issue that has quickly polarized many Americans over the summer. Should one of the last untapped wilderness areas in our country be tapped for oil? And now with the recent terrorist attacks in New York and Washington, D.C., Congress is expected to look more closely at domestic sources of oil rather than importing it. Well, in June, we traveled to one of those sources, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska, a place few people will ever see for themselves.
This here is about 5 minutes worth of gas.
We're ready. Our journey began, as most do in this vast state, aboard a bush plane. It would be the first of many. From Fairbanks, we flew about 250 miles to a small native settlement called Arctic Village, home to the Gochin Indians on the southern border of the refuge. You'll hear why these villagers believe drilling will dramatically disrupt a way of life they've known for generations. Another plane, another 100 miles north, over the towering mountains of the Brooks Range, into the heart of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, or ANWR as it's called. You'll see the proposed drilling area, a place only 1,500 people visit each year. And then we headed north again to see the start of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline at Prudhoe Bay. How has wildlife been affected by an oil field that's been around for decades? You'll see what we discovered.
Here we are, 1:15 tomorrow.
On the final leg of our journey, we traveled east to an Inupiat Eskimo village called Kaktovik. It's on the shores of the Arctic Ocean. You'll hear why many in this village embrace the prospect of oil drilling in their own backyard. Drilling in one of the largest protected natural areas on the face of the earth. It seems everything in Alaska is big. The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge comprises 19.2 million acres. Of that, 1.5 million are being considered for exploration and drilling. Numbers like that are a little hard to grasp. So let's take a look at a map of Alaska. Here's the 19.2 million acres of the refuge, and here's the 1.5 million acres in contention. A huge amount by some standards, hardly a fly speck by others.
In Alaska, 95% of our Arctic has already been open or available to the oil industry. I don't think 5% is too much to ask.
Environmentalists like Sarah Chappell see the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge as North America's greatest wilderness. To them, it's a national treasure of vast wild land, free of industrialization, home to a spectacle of Arctic wildlife, and they're fighting to keep it that way.
It's true that we have an energy issue right now, and we need to be thinking about this, but the coastal plain of the refuge isn't the answer.
In midsummer, you'll find Dan Ritzman camping on the coastal plain where oil drilling is proposed, hosting media crews like ours.
So, is there any questions about bears?
Ritzman is lobbying against the plan. He works for the Alaska Coalition, an environmental group. He showed us how to pepper spray the grizzly bears should we happen to meet one.
The most important thing to remember is wind direction when you go to do this. You don't want to shoot the pepper spray into the wind.
When it comes to drilling, Ritzman believes we should be just as cautious as we are with the grizzlies and leave the refuge alone. He says many people value this last vestige of American frontier.
The idea that there's wolves and grizzly bears and muskox and these animals out there that are, living free and encumbered by humans or unpressured by humans, I think really speaks to Americans.
We're talking about 1.5 million acres in a 19 million acre refuge. The other 18 million acres will be wilderness.
Over on Alaska's North Slope, oil consultant Ken Boyd gives tours to visiting media of Prudhoe Bay, the largest oil field in North America, made up of more than 50 miles of pipeline, roads, and facilities. Boyd works for the group Arctic Power, reassuring people oil drilling in the refuge will not harm the environment.
And what it won't look like is this.
Could the refuge become the next Prudhoe Bay? Drilling opponents say the amount of oil there isn't enough to bother with. Drilling supporters believe it would be as much or more than Prudhoe Bay produces today, which is 10 billion barrels of oil.
If people think that's an insignificant amount of oil, I guess I have a different opinion.
After studying the area for 3 years, scientists at the U.S. Geological Survey Office concluded the oil potential is anywhere between 4 and 12 billion barrels, not including oil from native lands and offshore drilling. There's a 95% chance there's 4 billion and a 5% chance that 12 billion barrels exist. Oil that would take several decades to extract. Nevertheless, oil proponents say it could offset the amount we import from other countries. During a visit to the Twin Cities last May, President Bush said this is not just an energy security issue, but an issue of national security.
Overdependence on any one source of energy, especially a foreign source, leaves us vulnerable to price shocks, supply interruptions, and in the worst case, blackmail.
The U.S. consumed 7 billion barrels of oil last year, importing 57% of that. Surprisingly, we depend on Canada more than any other country for our oil imports. They account for half. Our next biggest suppliers are Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and Mexico. And yet oil supporters are adamant.
As long as cars and trucks run on gasoline, we will need oil, and we should produce more of it at home.
Environmentalists believe it's not the only oil solution for the U.S. New, albeit smaller, sources are emerging here on the North Slope. Last May, Phillips Alaska announced it discovered 3 oil gas fields, the biggest find in a decade. If ANWR is open to drilling, environmentalists question whether the oil will even go to U.S. customers. Right now, oil companies export 7% of the oil drilled here to China, South Korea, and Japan. If it does stay in the U.S.,
is it enough to lower the price of a gallon of gasoline?
To absolutely say that the price of oil would go down I think is impossible for me to tell you that. I mean, I couldn't tell you that with a straight face, I guess.
So you can't honestly say that, but you can honestly sit here and say that this is an amazing place and that it's critically important for the caribou. It's really important for nesting birds.
The coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is the destination for millions of migratory birds like the snow geese who come to nest and raise their young. We saw musk oxen, year-round residents of the plain, an Arctic fox. But no animal symbolizes the issue more for drilling opponents than the caribou. We watched as these caribou performed an annual ritual, migrating a distance equal to the state of Wyoming. 130,000 of them move across the plain. They're shedding their winter coat. The terrain provides a summer food source for females who will give birth there to some 40,000 calves. Normally the porcupine caribou have their calves out on the coastal plain, but this year Because of a late spring, scientists say many of the calves were born back in the mountain passes, which they believe will lead to a 50% mortality rate as calves die trying to cross these rivers. It's feared that more than just a late spring will cause a decline in the herd. If the oil companies come, former Minnesotan and biologist Fran Meier believes their presence will have a negative impact on what's considered the biological heart of the refuge, the birthing place for so many animals.
It's impossible to industrialize that area without changing the nature of that landscape.
What would an ANWR drilling site look like? The new Phillips Alaska pipeline facility, about 50 miles west of Prudhoe Bay, is considered the poster child of modern oil development. Instead of drilling straight down, at Alpine the drilling wells dive out in all directions, draining oil from a central location. There are no roads, except for one that doubles as an airstrip between two drill pads.
And there is a small production facility on there. There's a small camp there. There's a storage area, but it's all on 100 acres of gravel, which is about the size of a 9-hole golf course.
Nobody really knows how much area would ultimately get covered up with gravel.
But biologist Fran Meier says Boyd's description is just an estimate at best, since government scientists expect the oil to be tapped at several drilling sites, not just one, sites that will be connected by pipelines above ground. Oil proponents say that caribou have been mixing well with the industry for more than 2 decades.
I honestly don't know why the porcupine caribou herd are different than the caribou here, why they can't adapt or move.
At Prudhoe Bay, a much smaller herd of caribou exists among the pipelines, a herd that's grown in size. But Alaskan biologists found the sensitive female caribou have changed their birthing habits, moving for miles to get away from the oil development. 5 times as many caribou migrate to the refuge, using a relatively narrow area as a calving habitat.
So within the dynamics of that landscape and the densities of caribou, it's very likely that there'll be some different reactions that wouldn't necessarily be identical or the same as what happens at has happened so far at Prudhoe Bay.
Those arguments aside, here's the biggest reason biologist Fran Meier gives for not drilling.
We have one of the most complete, natural, ecologically functioning systems that's on a large scale that's been set aside for conservation that's left on the planet.
Some Alaskans say what happens to the refuge will have a big impact on their lives. There are no roads to Arctic Village. The only way is by airplane, so here we go. The tale of 2 villages coming up. And later, we kept running into Minnesota natives on this trip. You'll meet some of them. Your life's mission in here in Alaska is what?
To keep those precious wild places wild.
It is, in many ways, like stepping back in time. The clothes look like yours and mine, but the mindset is from days long past. In Arctic Village, they still gather as a community to share meals, moose, salmon, and the caribou. It is an animal and a way of life the Gwich'in Indians cherish and vow to protect.
We have caribou story, caribou dance, and we have, we use it for clothing, and it's our food on the table.
The hunters hunt and we bring in the meat, and caribou, harvest the caribou throughout the week.
If oil drilling is allowed in the refuge, these native Alaskans fear the caribou will disappear, and with them, food, clothing, and a connection to their Gwich'in ancestors. For them, they feel a violation of human rights.
Like Plains Indians, they lost their buffalo. And buffalo used to be their way of life.
There is some irony in the Gwich'in's argument against drilling. Nearly every resident of Arctic Village moves about on a 4-wheeler, and gas is a precious commodity. The people here in Arctic Village, they understand the high cost of gasoline. When we were paying $2 a gallon, they were paying $6.
And which is protection of our way of life.
Still, it's a price the Gwich'in chief, Evan Peter, is willing to pay. Educated in the lower 48, he understands America's need for less dependence on foreign oil, but not at the cost of his heritage. We talked in a dimly lit log cabin. No bathroom, no running water, But for this young leader, barely 25 years old, the riches he sees for his people do not come from oil.
What's really important in the world is maintaining the relationships that we have with each other as humans and the land and animals and spiritual balances.
And at a time when the lure of the outside world is great, especially for children and teenagers in Arctic Village, the lesson being taught by the chief and elders here is, it seems, being heard.
I know who I am and I know where my people came from. I know our history, and not many people can say that nowadays. I'm very proud to be a Gwich'in, and I love being a Gwich'in.
While the Gwich'in Indians here in Arctic Village are dead set against any drilling in the Arctic Refuge, their neighbors to the north are divided. Even in late June, the shores of Kaktovik are laden with ice. A cold breeze blows from the Arctic Ocean, and at midnight, the sun throws a warm glow off the top of the world. This Inupiat Eskimo village also sits atop oil-rich land. Drilling in the refuge would mean money.
We need the funding, we need all of that capital to go on because our cost of living is so high here.
Already, the oil industry has meant jobs, and taxes have built a new fire station, school, and a health center. Resources both natural and man-made. Resources their neighbors, the Gwich'in Indians, do not have. As we've seen, oil has brought modern convenience to the village of Kaktovik, in stark contrast to the Gwich'in Indians in Arctic Village. There's also a unique cultural difference between the two people. The Inupiat Eskimo heritage is tied less to the caribou and more to the sea and whales. This Arctic beach, still littered with the bones from last year's harvest of 3 bowhead whales. Polar bears spend winter nights picking them clean. It's a scene Kaktovik's oldest resident remembers even as a child. The pictures on her wall take her back 80 years.
Here's me, here's my cousin.
Nora's Scottish father and Inupiat mother brought the family here in 1927. Nora shared fond memories with me of hunting seals on the Arctic ice and building igloos to stay warm. But Nora, like others here, know those days are gone and wants progress, natural gas to heat their homes. Opening ANWR could do that. But the conveniences of modern life in Kaktovik do not mean the Inupiat have abandoned living off the land. Signs of that are everywhere, but so are signs of support for drilling. What is it about Alaska that keeps you here?
This is it.
Walt Audi frowns a little when he sees how quickly his neighbors back drilling in the refuge. For more than 30 years, he's made Kaktovik his life and his livelihood. He operates a small hotel and flies clients in his bush plane. As we looked out over the refuge, lit up by the sun at midnight, he was sure this will all change if oil is found here.
Go over to Frutal Bay and see if that's what you want, you know. You want to see pipelines all over the place.
Do you trust the oil companies, Walt, when they say that it'll be fine?
You're joking.
But Walt knows he's in the minority here. Oil means progress, and even in this remote tip of our country, progress is slowly etching away the wild that Walt found here as a young man. I ask him what he would do if one day he looks out over the refuge and sees the footprint of an oil rig. I might keep flying, he said, to the next last great frontier.
How does a guy with a Green Bay Packer hat and hailing from Wisconsin end up in Kaktovik, Alaska?
It wasn't planned.
It rarely is.
When we come back, running into former Midwesterners in the land of the midnight sun. As the saying goes, it's a small world, and on our trip to Alaska, that held true. Minnesotans were, well, as numerous as moose. Why are there so many Minnesotans in Alaska? Well, certainly views like this don't hurt, but there are other reasons.
Well, I grew up in Shakopee, Minnesota.
Kip Knutson is one of many Alaskans who support the oil industry. In Alaska, there's no income tax, Instead, every man, woman, and child gets an oil revenue check from the state. This year, it's for more than $1,900. Kip serves on the board of Arctic Power, promoting drilling in the refuge.
You have family back in Minnesota. What do they say?
They're a bit horrified that I'm in favor of exploration in that area.
Deb Moore is a transplanted Minnesotan as well. She's building a new house in the forest just outside Fairbanks. She's an expert on the Arctic and conservation and is fighting to keep the oil companies out of the refuge.
We could simply all inflate our tires to their proper pressure and we'd save more oil than would be found under the refuge in a year.
8 years ago, Dirk Nickish left crop dusting in Fergus Falls, Minnesota to become an Alaskan bush pilot.
Well, I came for the lifestyle.
Dirk flies over the refuge almost every day, ferrying oil people, environmentalists, and the media.
What am I going to leave for my kids? A really cool Suburban with leather seats and a trashed out Earth, or someplace left?
Some of the Minnesotans making the big decision traveled to Alaska this summer. Minnesota Congressman Gil Gutnick snapped these pictures in early July. He was a guest of oil supporters.
It certainly is not a beautiful mountainous area. This is a flat, nothing area.
Congressman Betty McCollum was a guest of environmentalists a few weeks later.
And it's not barren. It's rich and it's filled with life.
In August, the House passed measures allowing drilling in the refuge, but the U.S. Senate has yet to vote. What will happen to this oil field of dreams? Some final thoughts in a moment. As far as I can see in all directions, there is no sign of humans anywhere. This untouched frontier solitude is a major attraction here in the Arctic Refuge.
It's been in the Serengeti in Africa, and this is better.
Richard Spiener has made many an adventurous trip on the rivers that wind through the coastal plain.
We've been in the middle of 180,000 caribou, and it's just awesome.
From a hiker's perspective, and sometimes that's from very high up, even the small area oil industry analysts say they'll need for drilling will change the view. Right now you can look out 20 miles toward the Arctic Ocean and see only wilderness. But any changes would be a long time in coming. Even if Congress voted today on drilling in the refuge, drilling wouldn't begin until the year 2010. Some would like to end this debate once and for all.
Drilling in ANWR is the solution to our energy problems, and doing it responsibly is a way of life here in Alaska.
The Arctic Refuge will never be completely safe until it's permanently protected.
On September 11th, the fate of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge was thrown into a whole different light. Waging a war on terrorists may force members of Congress to rethink the security of our resources. We hope that by watching tonight, you now have a clearer picture of the pros and cons of this issue, so that you too can be a part of this very important national debate. I'm Randy Meier. Good night.